Ebony Rhodes seems to be a typical mom, trying to do the best for her kids. But when she drove them to the library to study for their exams, the mother couldn't have predicted that she would be pulled over by the cops. She knew that her license had expired, but that was far from her biggest problem. In the trunk, Rhodes had hidden a deep, dark secret. But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe, and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. Ebony Rhodes loved being a mother more than anything. She was so proud of her 4 kids and worked hard to provide them with everything she could. They lived in Atlanta, GA, where Rhodes worked at a local store. But despite the love in her family, things weren't as perfect as they could have been. Rhodes was a single mother without any other support. Her oldest son was 17 years old, so she could rely on him for some help. But she also wanted him to enjoy his last years of childhood. Whenever her children needed something that they didn't have, Rhodes would get creative. Rhodes had always taught her children the importance of working hard in school and getting good grades. Whenever they had a project or needed a place to study, she would drive them to the local library where there were reference books, computers, and librarians to help. No one in the community ever suspected the truth. Because Rhodes was a single mother of 4, she often had to worry about spending her money and time wisely. Things that weren't urgent didn't need her attention. She juggled work, home life, and parenting every day. No matter what, her kids always came first. But the law wouldn't necessarily see it that way. Rhodes tried to be optimistic and look on the bright side, but it seemed like one thing after another had been going wrong. When her kids asked to go to the library to study, she agreed, and they started driving across town. That's when her luck changed again for the worse. On their way to the library, Rhodes was pulled over by the local police. She immediately began to panic, though she tried to remain calm in front of her kids. When she looked in the rearview mirror and saw the officer approaching, tears flooded her eyes. She knew she was in trouble. The officer came to the car and asked why I was crying. While she waited to hear what the officer would say, Rhodes worried about how much it would cost to pay a ticket or get her license renewed. She told herself that she would find a way to come up with the money. After all, the car was priceless to her, and the reason was locked away inside the trunk. But despite her obvious remorse for not renewing her license, Rhodes's punishment was far worse than a warning or a fine. When she first heard the officer speak, she was certain there must have been some kind of mistake. She didn't know how her family would ever recover. The penalty was devastating. Instead of just giving her a ticket, the officer who pulled over Rhodes arrested her for driving illegally. Rhodes was so humiliated because her children were watching. Worse, as a single parent, she didn't have anyone else to take care of them while she sorted things out at the police station. Luckily, a colleague of Rhodes was able to come and pick up her kids, while Rhodes's sister traveled from Florida to look after them. But even as Rhodes was riding in the back of the police car, she wasn't even worried about the arrest. There was something even more upsetting weighing on her mind. When the officer had arrested her, he'd also impounded her vehicle. Rhodes had no idea how her family would ever get by without it. She started to feel hopeless that they would ever survive this setback. Still, she never told anyone the truth about what the car really meant to them. Before Rhodes's vehicle could be put in the police impound lot, it had to be searched for any contraband. From drugs to weapons, the police had found all sorts of strange things in vehicles in the past. But when they popped the trunk to Rhodes's car, they found something truly shocking. As she sat in her jail cell, the mom of 4's story began to circulate around the Atlanta Police Department. You see, to Rhodes, it wasn't just a car that had been impounded. And as police examined the vehicle further, they realized that she had been hiding a dark secret from the world. When the officers searching Rhodes's car realized they were facing a unique situation, they called their supervisor to ask what to do. It felt wrong to treat Rhodes's case like any other. Their questions continued up the chain of command. No one was quite sure what to do with Ebony Rhodes. The story spread until it eventually reached Deputy Chief Jeff Glazier. After looking over Rhodes's case, he realized he obviously didn't know enough about what had happened to her and how she'd ended up in jail. Based on what they'd found in her trunk, there was more to her than what had initially met the eye. So, he started digging. Deputy Chief Glazier realized that they'd misjudged Rhodes from the very beginning. After finding out more and more about her secret life, he realized things needed to change. According to CNN, he'd said to his wife, Even those closest to Rhodes had no idea that she was keeping secrets. Everything seemed normal on the surface. She showed up to her job at the store, spent time with her kids, and helped them with their schoolwork. She never missed a day of work and always put in extra effort. It turned out that all of it was just a cover for her real life. After clocking out, Rhodes would leave the store. With 4 kids to look after, she didn't have a lot of time to relax without having to worry about looking after them. And every night, she thought about the secret she hid from the rest of the world. She had no idea that everything was interconnected, and she was on a crash course with Deputy Chief Glazier. After investigating, Glazier learned that Rhodes and her 4 kids had been living in the car the police had just impounded. It seemed impossible to him that Rhodes had managed to keep her family and her life together under such dire circumstances. But he couldn't just give her car back and send her on her way. "When I got off work, we would just sleep right there in the parking lot in my car." When Rhodes hadn't been able to scrape together the deposit for a condo the year before, the hardworking mom found that she had no options left. She and her kids, 3 teenage brothers, Calvin, Jahima, and Isaac, and their 11-year-old sister Daniaha, loaded their belongings into their 1997 Buick. The car was, quite literally, their home. They ate together there. They'd play video games and hang out. And at the end of the day, they would sleep in the vehicle. Seemingly, this wasn't ideal, but Rhodes thought she'd be able to find a solution soon. But she quickly encountered an obstacle she'd never anticipated. Rhodes figured she would be able to find space at one of the local shelters. Since she had kids, she thought they would be prioritized over others. But when she started searching for a place for them, she quickly learned that shelters wouldn't accept whole families. Rhodes decided they were better off together, and they stayed living in the car. And that was the least of her problems. It was a struggle finding a safe place to park each night. Rhodes needed her rest to be able to go to work, but she didn't want to sleep if it meant her kids would be in danger. Yet while she was only working a low-paid job, it was at least enough to make sure her youngsters were clothed and fed and that the gas tank was full. How were her kids managing? Rhodes's 4 kids were tough and understood that she was doing her best to get them back on her feet. But their attendance at school was suffering because Rhodes couldn't be in 2 places at once. She promised herself that it would only be for a short while. But she wasn't able to keep that promise. And, in total, the family lived in the car for 6 months, right up until the vehicle was impounded. Word of the case got through to Officer Glazier from a colleague who, like Rhodes, was a single mom herself. And as luck would have it, Glazier had recently encountered the head of a shelter for homeless families. Wanting to help the mom and her 4 children, the deputy therefore picked up the phone. And thankfully, there was enough space for the Rhodes family, despite it being a busy time of year. Glazier couldn't wait to share the news. But Glazier still wasn't satisfied. Glazier dug a little deeper and got to know the family. He learned about the challenges that Rhodes faces and became firm friends with her and the kids. Indeed, there were still challenges that threatened the Rhodes family's stability. The mom of 4 sometimes got ill, but if she didn't work, she wouldn't get paid. She pushed through no matter what to provide for her children. Even though they'd lived through homelessness, 2 of Rhodes's children faced other challenges Glazier couldn't even imagine. One of Rhodes's sons struggles with asthma and learning difficulties, and her daughter has lupus and severely impaired vision. Rhodes did everything she could to get them as much care as possible for their conditions. And she wasn't the only one. Before long, her son Calvin started making sacrifices of his own. Although the eldest of the Rhodes clan, 17-year-old Calvin, goes to work in the evenings as soon as high school is over, Glazier remained concerned about the family's needs. And so he set up a GoFundMe page to create a safety net for Rhodes in times of difficulty. With the funds raised, Glazier has ensured that the Rhodes family have a year of rent and bills paid in advance. They also got another car when the Buick broke down. Moreover, the mother was able to spend some time with her son Jahimi when he suffered horrific burns in an accident early in 2018.